You're sitting in an afternoon strategy meeting, and an executive looks across the table and says, "I noticed a discrepancy in the data. Can you walk me through the logic?" It's a completely valid question, but inside your head, a silent alarm goes off. Before you even open your mouth, you're already playing a narrative in your mind. They know I missed it. I'm exposed, and they're going to figure out I shouldn't even be leading this project. And it doesn't stop there. On your drive home, you're replaying that short interaction on a nonstop loop, and you're completely exhausted from the mental marathon you just ran against yourself. If you're tired of letting the loops of doubt, hidden anxieties, and internal chatter run free in your mind, you're in the right place. Today, we're getting practical, and I'm walking you through a simple framework to help you catch those overthinking thoughts in real time, separate your feelings from the actual facts, and make confident choices when the pressure's dialed up. Do you find yourself sanitizing your faith just to fit into the corporate culture? Does your sense of worth rise and fall with your latest performance review? If you're an ambitious Christian woman navigating the friction between faith and work, you are not alone. Hi, I'm Jency, Jesus follower, corporate leader, and recovering overachiever. I spent years winning at work, but wrestling in my heart with the unspoken tensions of a secular workplace, until I learned how to decouple identity from performance, drop that corporate mask, and define success by purpose, not metrics. Welcome to Ambitious Faith at Work, the podcast for high achievers who want to lead with clarity, conviction, and courage, because you shouldn't have to choose between success and soul. So if you're ready to redefine success in a way that's anchored, authentic, and aligned, you're in the right place. It's time to stop hiding in plain sight and start showing up boldly as a light. Before we dive in, I just want to say a huge thank you for being here. This show is for you, and I love connecting with you directly. So email me at hello@jencymayer.com, and my email address is also in the show notes below. Send me the leadership questions you're navigating or the topics that you want to unpack next. And if what you're hearing resonates with you, please hit follow and leave a quick rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a few seconds, but that small action has a big impact. It really is the best thing you could do to support the show and to help ensure that other high achievers are able to find this community. Now let's dive into today's episode. Over the last couple of weeks, we've done some real digging. We looked at what imposter syndrome looks like at work, how it shows up, and the survival tactics we use to stay small and hide from the fears of failure, success, and judgment. But how do you actually live this out on a random Tuesday at 2 p.m. when a stressful email drops or a meeting goes sideways? Simply knowing that your fears are fueling your thoughts doesn't automatically stop the noise when you're sitting in the room. Imagine you're back in that afternoon strategy meeting. When that executive asks you to walk through the data, your feelings immediately tell you that you're being attacked, exposed, or tested. So what happens next? Usually, you'll default to one of two things. You either get defensive and over-explain the data to protect yourself, or you shut down, give a short answer, and spend the rest of the meeting completely checked out. In either scenario, you let an unexamined, anxious thought impact your performance and your presence. Here's the leadership reality. An unmanaged mind will always breed anxiety. If you don't have a strategy to manage your mental gymnastics in those moments, you will constantly default to self-protection. To fix that, you don't need a vague motivational speech. You need a simple, repeatable process to intercept the noise and take back control of your thoughts. So let's dive into the practical framework that will help you stop the swirl, test the thought, and replace the reel. The very first step in managing your mind is simple, but aggressive and requires intention. You have to stop the swirl before it runs free in your mind. Let's think of an analogy of like if you had an intruder walk up to your house. You're not going to let them in and offer them a chair and let them hang out. Instead, you're going to stop them at the door. Thoughts can act like intruders trying to slip through the doorway of our mind. So let's go back to that meeting. The second that executive says, "Walk me through the logic," that familiar intruder of insecurity tries to force its way through the door of your mind. If you don't halt that momentum right then, you're going to sit that intruder down in a chair, offer it coffee, and let it ruin the next 4 hours of your day. You have to stop the swirl and refuse to let it run free. I've told my kids before when they get in some kind of mood and their thinking's not great, I've told them you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that applies to the thoughts that we have at work too. If we don't stop the swirl, it will create the chaotic, overwhelming space where thoughts are spinning faster than you can process them. Remember that you are in control of your mind. You get to disposition thoughts at your doorway, and you get to decide what stays and what goes. The next step of the framework is to test the thought. Once you've caught the thought and stopped the swirl, you have to pull your emotions out of it and objectively consider the source. Where is this thought from? Is it from above or below? If it's from above, it's good and it's consistent with God's character. And if it's not, it's usually rooted in insecurity, bad habits, and past wounds. And the voice can be very accusatory. Philippians 4:8 gives us clear instructions on the types of thoughts that we should allow ourselves to think about. The verse says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." We can actually take those 8 characteristics that are listed in that verse and turn it into a 3-part filter that we run our thoughts through. And that filter would be fact, value, and virtue. So the first part of the filter is establishing if the thought is a fact. Is it true? Is it right? You have to ask yourself, is this thought grounded in reality? Or am I making assumptions? Or am I creating my own narrative in my mind? If it's not 100% true, dismiss it immediately. This is about focusing on facts, not feelings. And it's about separating your anxious feelings from the actual facts that you have. The second part of the filter is about value. The question that you ask is it good? We're trying to do a value check and understand the impact of this thought. Is it constructive or is it counterproductive? So ask yourself, does it build you up or does it tear you down? Insecurity is toxic and it's messy and it's a distraction. But true correction is clean and it holds you to an excellent standard without shame. The third part of the filter is virtue. This is when you're establishing if something represents the high standards of who you are and where you're going. So the question is it worth repeating? Ask yourself if you would say this thought out loud to a friend, a peer, or a team member. And if you wouldn't say it to someone you care about, then why are you giving yourself permission to say it to yourself? Your internal narrative has to meet that standard of virtue. If it isn't worth repeating out loud, it has no business taking up valuable real estate in your mind. Remember to always talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. The third step of the framework is to replace the real. So if a thought fails your filter when you're testing the truth, it doesn't get to stay. But you can't just leave an empty space in your mind. You have to actively replace that ambiguous anxiety loop with precise, targeted truth. We're often playing a highlight reel of our past mistakes or a fabricated reel of future worst-case scenarios in our mind. This step is where we replace our stinking thinking with truth-based thinking. Now, this is not about practicing fluffy, positive thinking or just trying to look on the bright side. This is that ultimate transition from proving to purposing, from self-protection to actually serving those around you. You're not pretending that things are perfect, and you're not just doing some motivation exercise. You're actively truth-seeking. We aren't aiming for a standard where negative thoughts never happen. We're aiming to recognize them and disposition them faster by filling our minds with what's true. So how do you do this? You choose to replace the fiction and the lies of those thoughts with the facts and reality of God's faithfulness in your life and who He says you are. When the lie pops up, you intentionally call to mind the biblical truth that you know that squashes the thought. For example, when fear attacks and says, "You can't handle this," you stop the swirl and you declare, "The Lord is my strength and my shield," which is what Psalms 28:7 tells us. Or you remind yourself of the truth we established last week. God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, like 2 Timothy 1:7 says. When shame whispers, "You'll never be enough for this role," you have to look at the evidence and say, that has already been settled. Romans 8:1 states, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So whatever shame is spinning in your mind cannot stay. You have to refuse to let it renegotiate your worth. And when comparison creeps in and whispers, look at how easily she commands the room. You're lagging behind. You have to reset your focus. Galatians 6:4 tells us to test our own actions and take pride in our assignments alone without comparing ourselves to anyone else. Your job isn't to mirror someone else's style or match their timeline. Your job is to steward the specific objectives God has put in your hands. Your role is a targeted assignment, not a competition. The step of replacing the real is where you choose to replace the fiction and the lies of those negative thoughts with the facts and reality of God's faithfulness and who He says you are. So the next time you're sitting in that afternoon strategy meeting and a question about your data flies across the table, I want you to remember that the silent alarm going off in your head is a lie. You are not exposed. You are not a fraud. And you are not an imposter. In that moment, remember your strategy to stop the swirl and disposition the thought at the door and determine if it gets to stay or if it needs to go. Then test the thought. Pull it out of your feelings and run it through your filters of whether it's a fact, if it has value, or if it has virtue. And then replace the real. This is where you break that mental loop and you replace it with God's truth. My challenge for you this week is simple, but not necessarily easy. Pick just one thought that's been running rampant and creating chaos in your mind. Don't let it just continue. Stop it, run it through your filters, and make a decision. If it's not true, if it's not constructive, and if it's not worth repeating, it's not welcome here. You can't always control the first thought that flies into your head, but you can control which one gets to stay. My prayer for you today is that you go lead with the clarity of who you are, the conviction of what you believe, and the courage to live out your calling in every room you enter. Thanks for choosing to spend a part of your day with me. I'll meet you back here next time. Hey friend, I hope today's episode gave you a little more courage to be yourself at work this week. If it resonated, would you please take 30 seconds and text it to someone you know who's also navigating those unseen tensions at work? And I'd truly appreciate it if you'd leave a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now. It's the best way to help more women realize they don't have to choose between their success and their soul. All right, that's it for today. It's time for me to close those 20 open browser tabs and prioritize my soul over my screen. Until next time, let's stop hiding in plain sight and start showing up boldly as a light.